The National Council of Teachers of Mathematics welcomes you to Adding It All Up, a podcast created by and for mathematics educators and teachers. Join us each month as we explore current topics, insights, and emerging trends with thought leaders in the math community. And now, the hosts of Adding It All Up, NCTM President Kevin Dykema and NCTM President-elect Latrenda Knighten.
Hi, I'm NCTM's President-elect. Welcome to the latest episode of Adding It All Up.
Thanks, Latrenda, and I'm Kevin Dykema. I have the pleasure of being the current NCTM president. We have a wonderful show for today. I'm so excited about this new venture between the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics and the National Council of Teachers of English to focus on engaging our elementary learners in integrating mathematics, language arts, and culture. Latrenda, before we dive into some of these other questions, let's talk about why did this come about? Why do we think this is such an important thing? How is this going to better meet the needs of all of our elementary classroom teachers?
To answer Kevin's question, why this is important, it's important because our elementary members have been asking for a long time to have an opportunity to join their two favorite subjects. Yes, we can say we're the two favorite subjects, literacy and mathematics. And they've been wanting to have an opportunity to collaborate and join. So that's part of the reason why we're having this wonderful event and why it's important. I'd also like to tell you that joining us today for this important conversation is Maria Franquiz from the University of Texas at Austin. Maria is my co-chair for the new NCTE-NCTM Joint Conference for Elementary Literacy and Mathematics taking place June 17th to 19th in New Orleans, Louisiana.
I'm so excited for this because I think it's going to serve the members well. We know that our elementary colleagues are teaching everything. And what a great opportunity to go and not only hear some sessions about math, some sessions about literacy, but also some sessions that combine the two content areas. And I'm so excited to come and learn. As a middle school teacher, I know there are not sessions that are geared for me, but I am so excited to learn more about this area of K-5 math and K-5 literacy and how to intertwine the two. And I know that I'll be able to take some of those ideas and apply it back into my own classroom as an 8th grade math teacher. So let's get Maria to introduce herself a moment as well, and then we'll dive into some questions. So Maria, I know Latrenda gave a quick introduction of you, but if you want to just talk very briefly about who you are and what is your passion area.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. I started as a preschool teacher, and I've been away from the direct classroom experience training teachers who want to teach it both in preschool and elementary school. I'm also interested in multilingual learners, so I also teach K-12 teachers who would like to be more influential with English as a second language learners. So it's been a beautiful career of classroom experience and then taking it into becoming a teacher educator. I love what I do, and I am so excited that we're getting teachers from literacy as well as mathematics together to share their ideas at the conference.
Fantastic. And thank you both to Maria and Latrenda for co-chairing the program committee for this first ever venture, and what an exciting opportunity this is. So let's dive in and talk a little bit more about the conference. Latrenda, I'll direct this first question towards you, and then Maria, feel free to jump in after Latrenda's done if there's anything that you want to add to the conversation. So Latrenda, how do you see the conference and showcasing the elements of both math and literacy, blending those two to help have a comprehensive learning experience?
One of the things that we think about is we know that students have to be able to read, write, listen, and speak and discuss in the mathematics classroom. So what a wonderful opportunity for us to think about what are those qualities, what are those strategies, what are those thought processes that we use in our literacy component of the curriculum, and how can we transfer that knowledge into what students are doing in mathematics as well. One of the other reasons is as much as we experience it, and I say some of our students, I should say, experience this in school, where you have, this is the time, but from 9 to 10 is only reading. And from 10:30 to 11:30 is only math. That does not happen in the real world. Things don't happen in isolation. So this gives us an opportunity to help our educators see how do we integrate things to make it more relevant, to make it more engaging, and really to make it more like what happens in the real world for students. So we want students to be able to utilize all of their skills, all of their talents in multi ways across the disciplines. So this gives us an opportunity to help our teachers with those strategies, but also to enhance what they're already doing and have them share ideas with each other as well.
I totally agree with you, Latrenda. And I'm thinking of early experiences of 3 and 4-year-olds, and as they go through the grades, the classroom is set up. The whole material culture of the classroom is set up with dress up if you need it, quiet corner with lots of books if you need it, manipulatives when you feel like you want to move and think about numeracy. So I think through the years, what is outside the classroom needs to be brought into the classroom, appropriate to the age. So I'm excited about how do teachers do this, because they're in charge of all the introduction of all the disciplines. So I'm really excited for this opportunity to share what works for you. How do you change it across time? If you go to another grade level, what do you recommend? So I'm really looking forward to that exchange.
Me too. Let's dig a little bit deeper into that. So, Maria, we'll start this time with you, and then Latrenda, if you want to jump in after that. We've talked about it's important, but why do you think it's so crucial that elementary teachers, in this case, really have the skill set to emphasize both math and literacy skills in the early grades? And what things, as the two of you put the program together, what things did you consider in making those selections? And how does this crucial aspect of needing both math and literacy, how is that going to be reflected in the program?
I think that children themselves, when they come into the classroom, don't separate the way that we do standards for literacy, standards for writing, standards for numeracy. They're just curious. They want to learn. They want to build on learning from outside the classroom, inside the classroom. So for me, successful places that really can show how we're building on parent knowledge, we're building on community knowledge, sometimes to really better the world for ourselves and for others. Content is not separated from that goal of being a better person, acquiring knowledge, that we separated into assessment of literacy or assessment of math. Yes, we're responsible to do that, but we can do that in a more holistic way. And that's what's exciting about bringing teachers that have different expertise. Although I would argue that elementary teachers over the years develop more than just one disciplinary area in expertise because they're responsible for the entire curriculum. And I want to know what the challenges are and share my successes and challenges. And then, I never thought of doing it this way. So I look forward to that kind of exchange and to build on this common ground of cross-disciplinary learning.
Thanks, Maria. Latrenda, is there anything you want to add to Maria's thoughts?
Just a little. I love how Maria so eloquently expressed why it's so important that we do this in the early grades. And one thing that I just want to share that I often remind my teachers, and Maria alluded to this when she talked about we're the stepping stones, we're the beginning. So many times I think teachers forget that we're sometimes the first formal teacher. And I say the first formal teacher because we know that the caregiver is the first teacher, but because sometimes this is the first introduction to a formal school setting. Actually, in elementary, we lay the foundation for that later learning. So the things that students are learning in pre-K, kinder, and first grade, these are the building blocks to what they're going to do as they move up along the progressions, and students are exploring algebraic thinking to actually being enrolled in a formal algebra class. And so we want to make sure that our first formal teachers or students have that opportunity to collaborate, to network, and think about how can I fine tune what I do to lay those building blocks, to lay that foundation for future learning for students, which is really what's going to travel with them throughout their lives. So we really want to give them a really strong foundation, the students as well as the educators who support them.
This is so exciting just to think about the integration of these two and why it's so important. And we've really focused our conversation so far a little bit on the importance of it. I want to shift our conversation a little bit and for a couple minutes just talk about a couple of the highlights, a couple of the key features of the program and the conference. And then we'll come back and talk a little bit more in general about why this is so important. So Maria, we'll start off with you for this one. As the program co-chair, what's one of your big hopes that attendees are going to walk away with from their experience at this conference?
What's very exciting is that the proposals that came in and the ones that were selected to present at the conference offer so much, whether you live in California or you live in Alabama or you live in Ohio. It was just impressive to see that teachers will come from all sections of the country to share their learning together. My hope is that will be a very creative space. And from the workshops that we read together and from the panels and the bursts that are going to be shared of new knowledge for the session participants, I'm very excited that it will generate such excitement and enthusiasm about teaching that we want to do it again. And we're at a time where that is so necessary. The last few years have been so intensely difficult for teachers across the nation. And to know that across the nation, they're coming together to share their best thinking is extremely exciting. And I think will foment a lot of hope and aspirations to work together to a better future in elementary education.
Thanks. Latrenda, what's one of your big hopes that attendees are going to walk away from the conference experiencing?
Well, a common theme you probably have noticed from listening to Maria and I, we've been talking a lot about the collaboration and the sharing of ideas. So to facilitate that process, one of the things we'll have are some formal opportunities for networking. And so I'm hoping that those educators will find, here's my friend who's in California and I'm here in Louisiana. I'm going to find someone that I can network with. So here's a thought partner, because if we didn't know it before, we all learned from the pandemic times how vital it is and how easy it is for us to collaborate with people just from anywhere, from all over. And so hoping that our teachers will take advantage of those opportunities and embrace themselves in those networking receptions and really take what happens in a common session, take it to another level and find someone who has some similarities, some differences, or ideas you want to learn more about and take advantage of that. And also to visit the exhibit hall where they can learn about new and innovative ideas and possibly even find some new materials to utilize in their classrooms to enhance what they're currently doing in their current practice. Things like that, I think, are going to be some of the highlights that teachers are going to talk about after this experience.
Yeah, I think so too. And I love that idea of the networking events from there. Maria, are there any other highlights, big events that you want to bring forth to the conversation here?
Well, I just loved Latrenda's use of network lounge. It just makes it so warm and comfy and makes me think about what elementary teachers try and do, a little corner that you need to go to sometimes where you can be cozy with a book, or you can be cozy as you're curiously manipulating to learn what you can create with yourself, or inviting a person or two to be with you. So I love that idea to do what we really do in our own classrooms. It just is a beautiful image. Part of reading and part of math is being able to imagine and to create, as well as to learn what is necessary, the grounding that's necessary. But to really emulate what we try for kids' minds to do in our own conference, it's a warm and fuzzy feeling for me right now.
Make your plans to be part of the conversation. Join the National Council of Teachers of English and National Council of Teachers of Mathematics at their joint conference for elementary literacy and mathematics, June 17th through the 19th in New Orleans. Reserve your spot at nctm.org/joint conference today.
Ashley, it's clear that the two of you have put a lot of thought into how can we create a conference experience? What can we do with a program to really help both disciplines come together, find those networking events, create some of those atmospheres that we want our elementary teachers to be creating in their own classrooms. This question goes to either one of you. Is there any other big key ideas about the conference that you want to raise up? Anything that I've missed with asking about the conference?
I think the only thing I could add is that we are interested in what's beyond the classroom walls. How can we give outside the classroom walls, and how can we receive? In other words, how can that in-between space between classrooms and community be bridged better in the teaching of mathematics and in English language arts?
Thank you, Maria, for saying that. And actually, that was a perfect segue, because for our conference, our two committees worked together, well, the joint committee worked together and created a set of strands. And actually, beyond the classroom walls was one of our strands. And what we mean by that is that those people who were proposing speaker proposals could choose one of those ideas that they wanted to speak about. And there were several people who were inspired by that idea. So I hope that if you're listening to this podcast, you're making plans to attend this conference, and you take advantage of those sessions where people actually show you how to make those connections of what happens beyond the walls of the classroom. And if I could share one more little teaser for you guys, because I know you're going to want to know about this. A lot of you know that NCTE and NCTM both sponsor the Mathical Awards. And the Mathical Awards, an award to those outstanding literature books that also feature mathematics. And it's in a real life, real world context. So it's the 10th anniversary of Mathical. So you're going to see some celebrations for that 10th anniversary. And where else would you celebrate other than New Orleans, Louisiana? Because we know how to celebrate things really well. And I'll tell you a little bit about one of our keynote speakers. We're going to have several keynote sessions. And so many of you are probably familiar with Danica McKellar. I watched her as a child actor in the Wonder Years, but some of you know of her work as a mathematician. Once she grew up and became an adult and she went to college, she actually pursued a degree in mathematics, and now she has a PhD in mathematics. And then she became an author, and she primarily writes books that feature mathematics. She started out by doing a series for young adults, so really talking about why math is important and encouraging students, primarily girls and other students who represent marginalized populations, about the importance of mathematics and what it looks like in the real world. And now she's writing books for our younger students. And that's one of the books that was awarded a Mathical Prize. So I know a lot of people will look forward to hearing her talk about how math has inspired her throughout her life and throughout her career and things like that, and look forward to a couple other keynote speakers who happen to be also Mathical authors. We'll talk about their wonderful books and things like that. So I think it's just going to be a wonderful opportunity to see all the surprises we have in store for you.
Wow. Thanks, Maria and Latrenda. I was looking forward to the conference before hearing you talk more about it. But now hearing you talk about your goals for it, some of the key features, I'm even more excited. And I wish it was next week instead of next month. I want to shift the conversation back to a little bit more about, just teaching in general with math and literacy. So Maria, we'll start out with you for this next one. What advice would you give educators looking to enhance their approach to teaching math and literacy in those early grades?
The early grades, for me, is easier to showcase how a teacher, for instance, teaches through a theme, because you can include math and you can include reading, you can include writing when you have an important theme in a community. But to expand beyond that, to be even more inclusive, from outside the classroom walls, bringing in experts into the classroom as an example of people who actually use math every day or people who actually use literacy every day is something that in the early grades is exciting, particularly if it happens to be the types of careers that little children understand. We hope there'll be secondary teachers there too, because a teacher is not about a content. A teacher is about teaching whatever the audience may be hungry for. And some areas are more comfortable and other areas are less comfortable. But in the early grades, we go there, and I would like through the grades for teachers to expand their identity, whether they're a math teacher or a literacy teacher, with good ideas that they might get from teachers who have successful experiences in their classrooms and share them. So my hope is that whether it's early grades or later grades, that expanded identity of teaching is made available to all.
Thanks. Latrenda, do you have any advice for educators looking to better enhance their approach to teaching math and literacy at those early grades?
I can think of just only one thing to add to that. Something I was reaching way back to remember my early teaching years as a kindergarten teacher. And one of the things I learned to do was to involve my students. Like if we were having a new topic we were going to explore. And so we actually would start with telling them we're going to learn about apples or something like that. And so what are some things you can think about? And so listening to some of the ideas that they said, a lot of times that gave me ideas of where to go next. And it gave me ideas of how to use some activities in math to enhance their idea about that topic. How could I use literacy to do that? How could they write about it? And then could we even look at science and social studies, things like that? So sometimes just having those brainstorming discussions with your students will spark some ideas. And it also will remind them that it happens, as Maria said, it happens in everyday life all the time. And it just happens in the careers they're interested in, or just the activities they engage in on a regular basis. So that was helpful for me as a beginning teacher to think about a topic and just get some ideas from my students if I wanted to see how could I do that more thematic teaching approach. That helped me as an early career teacher.
Thanks, Latrenda, for sharing that story of early career for you in the early grades. And bless you and bless Maria both for starting out in kindergarten and preschool, two skill sets that I don't think I would be able to have the patience to do with that, giving my 8th graders any day of the week. I want to wrap up this conversation with probably one last question here, and then Maria will give you a chance to respond as well. So Latrenda, we'll start with you for this last question. How does incorporating math concepts into literacy activities and literacy concepts into math activities, how is that so especially powerful for our youngest learners?
So one of the things we know from working with young children and really all learners, it's important for students to be able to make connections. And we talk about making connections. We talk about making connections to the real world, making connections to the context that they're having those activities in, but also connecting things that they're doing from one content area to the other, one topic to the next. And we know that when students can make those connections, they actually begin to form their own building blocks. So they have foundational knowledge on one thing, and then they can use something else that they're learning about and make connections between those two ideas. And then that's where you have an opportunity to increase that stick-to-itness, where students actually begin to learn those concepts because they've internalized them. And so it really gives students an opportunity to make sense of their learning. And I feel as if when students have an opportunity to see how those things are intertwined, they really begin to see that what happens in school is relevant, is meaningful. So it's not just this place I go for most of my day. I do meaningless things. These are real activities. These are real topics that actually occur outside of the school setting, I can make connections and I can build on those. And then I can use it to apply to things around me. So we're really building our students as lifelong learners, but we're really helping them to make those connections so that they really can make sense of the things that they're learning about.
Thanks, Latrenda. Maria, anything you want to add to that conversation?
I love Latrenda's explanation of how connections work for kids. And it adds that holistic element that I am part of the world is part of me. And in that world, I use different kinds of knowledge to understand problems and to solve problems. That holistic view is easier to hang on to when education is not departmentalized. Like Latrenda had said earlier, an hour we do reading, and then the next hour we do math, the next 45 minutes social studies. When life isn't really that way, it's interconnected holistically. So those experiences must also help students remember their place and the ways they can participate in the world, and then bring back that knowledge as they try it out. What else do I need next in order to keep building on this knowledge? Those connections in and out of the classroom are critical. Connections between one discipline and another discipline, reinforcing that. I love to reinforce what we learn in numeracy into my writing class, for instance, so that I can express my learning. That's why we also have word problems, but you have to manipulate it sometimes to be able to write about it. So I totally agree. Our job is really interconnectedness across the disciplines and across each other.
Well, thank you, Maria and Latrenda, for sharing your thoughts today. Thank you especially for being the program co-chairs for this very exciting event. Thanks, Maria, for joining us today as our guest. Thanks again, Latrenda, for wearing two hats, both as a guest and as my co-host.
Thanks, Kevin.
I want to thank you both. This is a wonderful way in order to communicate the wonderful effort that we're making together for this first conference in New Orleans.
And as we wrap up today's session, I really want to invite our audience to join us again next month for the latest episode of Adding It All Up. And hopefully we'll see you in person in June in New Orleans at the conference.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Adding It All Up featuring Maria Franquiz. At NCTM, we strive to bring you the biggest topics happening in mathematics. Join us next month for another exciting discussion.
Save up to 20% off your registration for the NCTE-NCTM Joint Conference for Elementary Literacy and Mathematics in New Orleans when you register by June 16th. Visit nctm.org/joint conference to register today.